see. Otherwise, when it's done, I'll send you a link, and you can share it with whomever you would like. So,
That's good.
rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry. Good day, and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast where we take a deep dive into our poems from youth, yesteryear, or even yesterday, always asking the question, why in the world did I write this? I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dave.
And today we have with us the author of Jesus Merch, a catalog of poems, and Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating. Really, need we say more? Well, technically, yes, because while we will definitely have to talk about those amazing titles and books, we are bringing our guest on to talk about perhaps the less than stellar work. Megan McDermott, welcome to My Bad Poetry.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so is there anything in the intro that we might have missed?
I do have one other chapbook,
Good.
which is called Woman as Communion, and it's from Game Over Books, a little small press out in Boston. And that's a lot of my women in the Bible poems ended up in that one. But otherwise, I think that's about it.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Okay, favorite, if you had to choose, favorite women's story in the Bible?
Ruth, just
Yeah.
hands down, Ruth. No?
Esther, come on. It's Esther.
Are you kidding me?
Esther is the correct answer.
No, I'm totally 100% Ruth on that.
Ruth is about women's friendship and each other, and Esther. I mean, Esther is good, but
Esther's
it's
good.
also,
Esther's good.
A beauty pageant,
Yeah.
patriarchy. There's a lot there. In
Wait. No, patriarchy in the Bible? What? It's almost as if we ask the other question, what's your favorite male story in the Bible? Oh, wow. This just got awkward.
Well, okay, I need to go on a little Esther tangent. I may
Yes, please.
have been at a youth conference where multiple speakers said that Esther signed up to be in the running for the new queen. I got back to my room and I'm looking up on my phone, Esther won. And I was like, I don't think
Nope.
that's what happened there.
No. And the whole way the vacancy, I mean, with Vashti, I mean,
Yeah.
oh, man.
Yeah, and it was a great conference. But trying to summarize Esther in a quick way for that audience, I think they downplayed the patriarchy a little bit. And I was like, they're high schoolers. They can handle it. We can actually talk about anyway. Esther rant.
Esther.
That is a very good
I talk
rant.
about in my poems. In
Perfect.
Women in Communion. Go read that.
Women in
For
Communion.
more ranting about women in scripture.
I love it. Well, that was not one that I grabbed for myself, so I'm gonna have to run to that press and grab it right after this. Well, let's see here, Dave. Before we get too much more on tangents with our, what is it called? We share table together. Our communion.
Full communion agreement.
Yeah.
Yes, we are in full communion agreement. I consider the Episcopalians like the hipster sister of Lutheran. Does that work?
I always said when I was in div school, you could tell the Lutherans and Episcopalians apart because it's similar vibes, but y'all are nicer than us.
Ooh.
And that was
I don't know.
Or there's a little bit, I don't know. That was my seminary generalization.
I'll take
but it might not work universally.
I think Episcopalians are nicer and Lutherans are more catty, I would say.
This is fascinating.
The backhanded compliment. Yeah. We're catty.
Yeah. Well, I'm always envious of the Episcopalians' liturgy. It's that lovely high church yet incredibly welcoming theology. It's a good balance.
Right?
Yeah, it's interesting to try to kind of explain it to people at times because there is this traditional element and core kind of to Episcopal identity. And then at the same time, in terms of people's actual theologies, it's so open wide and all over the map. And I think it doesn't always make immediate sense to me that those two things are together. That, it's a fairly traditional liturgy, and you might be in an Episcopal church where tons of the people actually hate the Nicene Creed, or it may, may be. So it's an interesting mix, but I do think it can be, when done well, a compelling mix of both being progressive and having this kind of traditional core to it.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, now you really have to rein us in. Bring us into the realm of poetry with whatever you wrote this week.
I wrote a poem called Minnesota Maybe. And I feel like this is pretty applicable not only to Minnesota, but just humans.
Okay.
No, yeah. Ooh, well, yup. Sounds great, but, yeah, no. I do have to admit, I did not technically write this poem. This was one that was said to me on the phone.
So it's a found poem. There you go.
It's a found poem.
Dave, you have found a new style of poetry that,
right?
I think that was a well-found poem.
Right? I have moved away from limericks and haikus, and the next form of poetry is one that I didn't write. Cool.
Minnesota Maybe. In my head immediately went to rom-com title, and then I was like, maybe it's a Hallmark rom-com title. Like, it got more specific in my brain of like, Minnesota Maybe is the Hallmark movie about people maybe falling in love in Minnesota.
I desperately want to see that, because then the accents would be so good. I don't know there, Mabel. I would love to go to the sock hop with you there, Mabel, but I have to get back to New York City and my big time important job.
Spot on, Dave.
No?
Yeah. Well, Megan, we're clearly in a mood, but let's get into your work. What you have found for us is clearly more than just a found poem of a conversation on a phone. These are lengthy stanzas from a 17-year-old you, and I am so excited to hear them. The first one that we see off the bat is The Prince. So let's start with The Prince.
Yeah, let's do The Prince. Okay. The Prince. Campus dusted with a fresh coat of leaves, ivy slinking up grandiose castle-like walls, a tree trunk, my resting place, a book in my lap, your hand in my hand. We set aside studies so I can gaze into eyes steadfast and blue, so your hands can run through my hair, so they can cup my face, so our lips can touch. Words of affection spill forth, words like love, forever, beautiful, talking that promises faithfulness and hopes for wedded bliss. Time runs short and it's back to class, where I read old love sonnets, which I now understand. They evoke images of dark hair, strong arms. In the moonlight, under a stone arch, you strum on your guitar, your voice a soulful trickle recalling our hearts' whispers. Connection streams between us like the night I first saw you, sitting by yourself in a chapel pew, bathed in candlelight and my adoring stare. Like that night when you first saw me, the miracle of the story, the miracle that I wished for, the miracle that, as of now, is pure imagining, waiting for my acceptance, for life's upturn, for you.
Ooh.
I have so many thoughts about my own old poem.
17-year-old you was pretty confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. You understood those love sonnets.
I was just going to say, this is clearly the poem of someone who has never dated or done anything whatsoever. clear. But and there are just so many. The thing that really killed me when I found this, I looked through my old email account and I was like, there has to be some poems that exist in here. It was the mentioning of the chapel.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I really wanted to go to Princeton when I was a senior in college. I didn't get in, but that was my goal. And 95% of the reason I really wanted to go to Princeton was I visited campus and it had this beautiful chapel. And I was like, I want to get married there. So that's why I wanted to go to Princeton. So I'm clearly like present in this. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to find my perfect Christian boy and we're going to meet in a chapel and he's going to play guitar to me. It's just, and I,
this is incredible.
Would it be a Christian love story if it wasn't for moonlit guitar playing? Just like the dude bro who knows the chords to I Can Only Imagine, and that's it.
And that we're talking about wedded bliss in college also. Like,
yep. That first love will be the one that you marry for sure. You know, just it will be forever. Oh, wow. This is incredible.
The other detail that looking back, I was like, what was the part about the blue eyes, which I just feel like was nothing I ever, like the chapel stuff and the guitar. Like I look back and I'm like, yeah, teenage me was all about that. But the blue eyes, I'm like, that's just random cliche crap. I was like, I never cared what color anyone's eyes were, like ever. But it just amused me that eyes steadfast and blue. I was like, really? That you didn't care about that at all.
Yeah, the blue eyes stood out in the fact that you then cited an old sonnet which evoked dark hair and strong arms. Do you have any inkling, maybe were you studying sonnets in high school and you know of one? Because it's not ringing a bell of a dark-haired sonnet.
Oh no, I don't think it's that.
Oh, okay.
Specific or knowledgeable of a reference.
I was gonna say, like, maybe off the top of your head, you're like, oh, it's Shakespeare's sonnet number 27 or something.
I think that just is me being like, I like guys with dark hair.
Dark hair, but blue eyes. Megan, I see your problem here. That's very rare genetically.
Well, the funny thing though is the dark hair thing. I read that and I'm like, oh yeah, actually, teenage me cared about that. But the blue eyes thing, pure cliche. So that really wasn't a requirement. That was just for the sake of poetry. The dark hair was like a real thing. The blue eyes, that was just an affectation.
So you're casting yourself into Princeton.
I think so.
Okay. Is that the ivy that you're evoking?
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. This must have been like after I visited Princeton and was very in my fantasizing about my college life era.
Wow.
Well, and you're going to the town of princes, right? The Prince town.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Look at you, Dave.
Layers.
I was waiting for a turn because all I was thinking was like Machiavelli and the Prince. And I'm like, is this going to turn real bad real quick? Or no?
No. Yeah. Well, and that's so interesting because I think even as I've gotten older and hopefully my poetry has gotten better, often in workshops, and it's usually male professors who will be like, are you being ironic here? And I'm like, no, that I'm just that earnestly dramatic about my life. I think that what is kind of, I don't know if it's lovely or disturbing when I read some of these old poems, I'm like, oh, my new poems are talking about some of the same thing. Like I have so many romantic angst poems that I feel like have some connection to this.
Sure.
They are hopefully a little better. But the level emotionally that I'm like, oh yeah, the angst and desire of this, I'm like, that's still in a bunch of my poems today. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. You know, I'm 31 now. This was 17, but the themes coming up. Oh.
So what you're saying is that other chapbook of yours, Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating, for those who are interested in your work and love this poem, should definitely check out that one.
Yeah, if you want to see that same voice, jaded, another 10 years or so, then but still single, then check out Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating. What happens to this narrator when she doesn't find her man in college? That's what Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating is about.
Your Prince Charming was waiting there at Princeton, and you never went
I
there.
take it in.
Under that tree, just waiting.
The arch, yeah.
Yeah.
So, dark hair, guitar player, playing in the chapel? Is he leading? Is he leading like a praise band in this candlelit chapel service?
I don't think he's I think that's supposed to be. So in the flash forward, I think this is a flashback. We first meet in the chapel, and I don't know, sitting by yourself, and I don't know why he's sitting alone. Like I do get like kind of late night vibes from that. Like this person is sitting alone in the chapel. I don't know, praying and
bathed in candlelight. You get that that so romantic chapel setting.
You are talking to like the only two people in the world that would agree with you.
My first date with the person I ended up marrying was at the college chapel.
Oh my gosh.
So this is my love story.
I definitely have had a date before, or I thought it was a date. I don't know if you thought it was a date. That ended at like candlelit Compline.
Oh yeah.
I don't like recommend it.
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
You're sitting awkwardly in silence in the dark for 20 minutes next to each other. Like a little weird.
Oh, the reason I was in the chapel was because our organist, he was playing an organ cover of a silent movie for Halloween. So that's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, that's more date.
Yeah, we went to see a movie. It just happened to be at the chapel with the church organ, but it was fun. Anyway.
Yeah, my Lutheran college had concerts in the chapel. Like they had Snoop Dogg at the chapel once. So
wow. What?
Yeah, because they had a stage that like rotates, so you could rotate the churchy part away.
Dude.
Then just have a normal stage or something like that.
I went to the wrong Lutheran college.
I also had an on-campus nightclub. Susquehanna University. Shout out to. Well, what is funny is that so I started getting more serious about poetry in college, but I was a creative writing major from the start, but I mostly wrote fiction. And I would have said like, oh, I am not a poet. I don't write poetry. But then I find all these poems I was writing in high school. But I think even my high school self had a sense that they were like bad. They weren't as good as like the prose I was writing. So it was like this hidden kind of guilty pleasure, even though I read something at our baccalaureate ceremony. I should have tried to find it. I was writing poetry, but I had this like relationship to it where I didn't take it as seriously as my other writing. And it wasn't until I kind of actually took a class on poetry where I thought, oh, maybe I can make this better.
You dropped a detail in the context of you finding this poem that I want to pursue a little. You were searching your old emails?
Yeah, because like whatever computer I was writing on, I have no access to, right? Like, I don't think I've done a very good job at keeping my old writing organized in any way, but my Gmail account that I don't really use very much, I must have opened when I was like 11 or 12. And I knew I had some friends who I would send like novel excerpts to because I was like writing novels in high school because
you were.
I was. So I thought there must be some poetry that had snuck its way in there too. So that was my thought process that there would be some hidden in that old email account, and there were.
So you're telling me that this was shared with a beloved friend?
No, I think it was shared to my. I'll have to go back.
Did you email yourself these poems?
I think I emailed myself. Or did this go? One of the emails I looked at was for my writing portfolio for college.
Ooh.
And I don't remember if this was in the things I ended up submitting
in the mix.
I'm convinced by my experience as a creative writing major in college that they don't really look at any. Yeah, so someone read this at some point besides me, but not in a very long time until now.
Until now.
And we are very grateful for it.
Yeah.
Dave, I think it's time we move on. It's your turn to pick.
So this is tough because, I mean, old photographs. Come on. Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. Or an Easter poem. Oh, I didn't see A Play in Love.
Yeah, I know. There's so many good options. Megan, can we get a promise that you will come back sometime?
I'll come back.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay, good.
That will alleviate some of the pressure.
After Thanksgiving, I could go look around in my childhood bedroom and we'll have all sorts of collections.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dave, hopefully that takes a little pressure off of you.
Okay. Well, then we'll have to go old photographs.
Okay.
I feel good about old photographs. Looking through old photographs, bringing back those ancient laughs, different friendships, different times, a less scarred heart, a different mind. Before there was desperation lurking under pale white skin, before falling too hard was a sin, there was the girl in the picture, heart bounding with isms, idealism, romanticism. I feel her hope overwhelming, her optimism indomitable. Photograph me surges within me now, but can they coexist? Me now has remnants of her, but is dreary, heart-weary, pining pessimism. The idea of a me previous wrestles inside, prompting wriggles when these pictures, in fact, should provide giggles. Reminiscences blanket me with warmth, but send me to shivers of youthful assumptions gone sour, unfulfilled. Setting down the photographs, but still holding her in my heart. She tells me, chin up, dreams come true are on their way. I don't tell her otherwise. I'll let her have her day. Ooh.
So at 17, that's when you really hit your stride in your age of wisdom, yeah?
That I'm so fascinated by like what age was I looking back on?
Right.
Like,
I was so young then.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated by how jaded this comes across. Yeah, I'm intrigued at what, because again, I think this was like 17 years old, probably.
Right.
And to put it in conversation with the Prince, both of these as like looking back poems. The Prince is that lovely little inception of looking back, and yet it is the dream looking forward, the miracle that is to be. But it's so optimistic, and it's so like the romanticism of it all. And then you seem to be critiquing your own self in real time here, and that you're estimating the same around 2009, and you're saying, look at this young girl wrapped up in idealism and romanticisms. That's incredible.
Right. Luckily, I've grown past my romanticism. Now let me tell you about my plans for Princeton.
My Prince Charming awaits.
But it's like, I remember back to my senior year, and I remember being very like angsty and heartbroken over a guy who I like never even told that I liked him, but like somehow felt, profoundly rejected because he was dating someone else, even though I did nothing. But I remember being very in that angsty, insecure state. And I do think there was a difference, right, between how I was thinking about my life in high school and like what it would be in college. I think there was this hope of like everything changes when you get to college. It'll all be so different. And so even though those poems were at the same time, I think one of them was really immersed, like, oh, this is me thinking about my high school life and being miserable. And the other is like holding out that hope that everything changes when you go to college. And I think we like sell kids on that hope sometimes. I probably do. I mean, to like kids in youth group, I'm like, yeah, middle school or high school sex.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's true. And it's just not always true to the extent that of the fantasy in the print.
Yes. Yeah. I think I love that idea of we sell kids on it gets better. And it's like, but what gets better? Well, a lot of things get better, but I think because I was in that same mentality, it's like I'm going to get to college and not only will my surrounding, like the situation will just be like 20 times, 30 times better, but you almost get this idea that I can just totally reinvent myself. Yeah. I think we sell kids on this idea that college is radically different. It's like, no, you're still you. You're still going to come with your same quirks and hobbies and things.
I don't think I've ever heard that before. I've never heard the promise of it getting better in college or anything. Like, guys like us are cool in college from Be More Chill, or any TV show about a coming of age where they're looking forward because they're a nerd and they're going to be cool in college instead, or they're going to be computer programmers, so it's going to be fine. I've never seen anything like that.
That makes me think about it. Yeah, so much of this poem probably is coming out of being a nerd.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh,
why do you think we identify with it so much? It must be
a totally different relationship to like what college is like. If you were the like cool person in high school, like the Prince poem, you wouldn't need that poem if that, you know.
That's true.
But yeah, it's interesting to read things from my teenage self, especially like a part of my job now is youth ministry and like working with teenagers or working with like college students and like early college. So being brought back to like my mindset in those times is interesting.
The pining pessimism. Wait, no, that's your future self.
My present self, probably. Like, you know.
Okay, I have two questions. Dave joked about Nickelback's Photograph, but clearly that first stanza is just an entire riff on that opening line. You just added like 3 new words to it.
I wonder if that was conscious or not. Like, when did that song came out around then, right?
Yeah.
Nickelback. I gotta look it up. That would have been 2005. Yeah, that's
okay.
It's been rolling around the zeitgeist for a while.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't think I consciously was like, a poem inspired by Nickelback.
Looking through old photographs, bringing back those ancient laughs. That's right there.
Oh. Okay, we're gonna have to set it to music. It just has to happen now.
It rhymes,
right?
Some of it, not all.
Some of it. Yeah. Okay, my other question was, were you a fan of Twilight?
I just was thinking about that with the pale white skin.
Yep.
I wasn't.
Really?
Wild. Why? Yeah, because I was like too cool for school, right? I was like, oh, all these people think they're into reading now. The only book they've read is Twilight. So I didn't read Twilight until I was in a feminist literature class in college, and I did like a Freudian analysis of Twilight. So I did, but I must have been reading probably some other supernatural young adult novel stuff. But also people do just tell me I'm pale a lot. I need to put that in there. I don't know, like it was, it wasn't a complete exaggeration.
I mean, again, you're talking to two unbelievable nerds. So, yeah, I get that. I remember getting upset with one of my friends in high school because she was a real reader and she finished all of the Harry Potter books. And I went, "Oh, really? You've read Harry Potter? That's what you've read?"
The most popular series in the world.
And but it felt like it hit me like a ton of bricks when I said it. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm that guy." Oh no!
I did read Twilight in high school because a girl I liked was reading Twilight in high school. And I was like, well, what does this Edward have that I can...
Not a good role model.
No.
Stalkery, plays piano, moody, jealous, check.
Shiny.
Yeah, I couldn't, I wasn't going to bathe in glitter there.
I wouldn't put it past you, Aaron.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, you also throw in the word indomitable.
Yeah.
Just right in the middle there.
Had to go for it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I really wish I knew like what age I was comparing myself to. Like, was I thinking about like 10-year-old me? Was I thinking about like 13-year-old me? Like, what were these photographs? Yeah. And that there's also this mention of like, what did I say? Different friendships. So I'm also like hinting at this friendship drama as well. And I'm just not poetically curious, but personally curious.
Sure.
Like, which friends was I thinking about?
Well, there are those moments, at least, like, you look back in elementary school and you're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so and I did hang out back then. And now we're in very different cliques in high school. So maybe, yeah. But it feels like you're experiencing, like, a cringe. Like, you're looking back and you're like, oh, I wore those glasses? Or, oh, that's when I had my bowl cut.
Well, doing this, finding these old poems made me think, oh, how much am I going to cringe in like 15 or 20 years about the stuff that I have now that is like very publicly out in the world, in books and in journals and websites. And I hope the craft won't make me cringe, but I feel like the personal encountering yourself and who you were at a certain moment, there's hopefully there's both cringe and compassion for that past self. But
that's what we hope for with all our guests and all the poems, that cringe and compassion. It's But some of our older poets who have been on have brought their previously published work. So, hate to break it to you, Megan, but you might find something in 30 years and be like, oh.
Oh, I'm sure.
I just have to bring up, by far, the best line of this poem. The idea of a me previous wrestles inside, prompting wriggles, when these pictures, in fact, should provide giggles. I was this close to muting myself because I didn't think I could hold back my giggles there. That made me so happy inside.
I'm glad I decided that was when the rhyming needed to come back for wriggles and giggles.
That is, yeah, to evoke the word giggles in what otherwise feels like such an austere, serious poem, and to have it be a rhyme, it's like, oh, yeah.
Optimism indomitable. Giggles.
Wriggles and giggles.
And even that it's like, in fact, should provide giggles. Like the tonal shift of, in fact, this is actually accurate that there should be giggles. Like, this is serious business.
It does feel sitting in like a tall leather chair with like the big wings on either side and a guy with a British accent just, Ah, yes, of course. It makes me giggle.
See, I was thinking, sorry, if I did not have any context for this and we were to hear the prints and then we were to hear old photographs, it would almost make perfect sense. Like 10 years down the line, you're reading the prints and you're like, look at this laughable optimism of Prince Charming. Ha 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 ha. But it's happened in the same year.
Honestly, I feel like that feels very reflective of me as a person. Because I think people who don't know me very well or who only know like my professional self think I'm like the cheeriest person alive. They like, and like I just come across like as constantly kind of happy. And like any close friend of mine or someone who's known me for a long time also knows I'm like angsty as hell. Like inner turmoil and drama and snarkiness that is also there. And they're both like the cheery thing that people see is like not inauthentic. That's just like an aspect of me. But I do think, yeah, more than poetically, these are bringing up so much like psychological analysis.
You contain like, multitudes.
How like your teenage self still often translates into your adult self, and like, yeah,
scarily too often, I think.
Right, that's the saddest realization. I was the worst in high school. I think that's the most difficult thing it's the most difficult thing in youth ministry is going, oh, that is very cringe. I'm pretty sure I did the exact same thing. Oh, crap.
and to know that there are some things like you can give advice on, but that you don't learn until you experience it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, especially I live in Amherst, which has Amherst College, Hampshire College, UMass, like lots of kids of professors and like just a very like intense environment more than where I grew up. And trying to convey that like actually your grades aren't the most important thing in the world and like what you achieve is not the most important thing. And I'm like, I know I wouldn't have listened to me.
Yeah.
If I was a teenager, I would be like, well, no, you're wrong. Like actually me eventually being the best at writing and in the school I want to go to, like that is the most important thing. Sorry. But it's so painful to be like, oh, I just want you to realize easier than I did, but that's life. And you gotta let them do their thing.
Do your parishioners know you're a poet?
They do. Okay. Yeah. And it's been an evolving kind of like relationship to how public I am about it.
Sure.
Because I think when I started at my church, I was much more nervous about people knowing and reading things that I might not want them to read.
Yeah, right.
But I think over time, like my church has just been super supportive. And there are tons of people who are interested in poetry and art. And so when my book came out in the spring, I was like, people are actually going to be kind of hurt if I just like hide that I have a book coming out and like keep it so hush on the down low. So I did a poetry reading, like a book launch at my church.
Cool.
And Matthew E. Henry read at the reading. So I tried to do it so it wasn't just come celebrate Megan. I was like, let's get two poets whose work is theological, and I'm one of them. And it went really well, but it was definitely the most nervous I've been to read poetry in ages. And I have recognized that like in ways I've definitely impacted what churches would hire me by writing that is out there. And that's just a reality I think I kind of have to accept because I stand behind the poems that I've published, and I just am not interested in kind of playing it safe with my poetry because I just think it's not good. Or at least it's not what I want to do. Like I just feel like an obligation, I think, to explore in poetry some of the stuff that I do, especially about relationships and purity culture and all of that mess. But it does mean like, yeah, there are poems out there that imply or more than heavily imply that I've had sex in my life, which may or may not be something that some churches can handle existing. So where I am right now is super supportive, but I'm aware that there are ways in which I probably make life a little difficult for myself. But it feels worth it to me.
No. Yeah. Well, clearly you are claiming these two poems as ones that you're proud of, you're putting out there in the world. We got to wrap up. This is very dangerous. So your newest book, Jesus Merch, just came out. And it is book. They are poems that people should read. So, but I don't have a corny segue. I was gonna. No, I just fear that if I make a pun, we'll go down another rabbit hole, and I want to respect your time, Megan, because I know that I need to edit my sermon as well. So before we let you go, here at My Bad Poetry, we end each week with the words of a true poet. So would you be willing to read for us another one of your poems, one that you are proud of?
Sure. And I think I'm gonna, because we ended up talking about the dating poems rather than the religion ones, I'm gonna stay on theme. So this was from my chapbook, Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating. And this poem is called Prayer Book for Contemporary Dating, The Index. For having sex at the right time, a now ill-defined concept. Third date with a visiting professor who didn't believe me about my inexperience, wrong. Third date with a single dad who would turn into my boyfriend, right. For confidence in dating app discernment. For no hiking on first dates. For cute underwear to match all my cute bras. For not getting dumped after actually investing in matching lingerie. For not getting dumped after finally upgrading to a queen-size mattress. For an end to dating website ads on Facebook. For more butches to show up when I search for women. For women who won't ask, have you had sex with women on the first date? For never again being told about the bathroom sex my date had in that very same bar. For not being seated next to a couple from my church. For avoidance of all moderates and anyone who would call themselves apolitical. For an ability to still believe I might run headfirst into love, or else an ability to stop wanting it. An escape from this in-between, a cycle of shifting from cynic to romantic according to the man and moment. For a day when this book gets packed up or donated, and I can no longer imagine what it's like to go to bed alone.
I love that. That is so good.
Yeah.
And it's so angsty, just.
Yep.
Very angsty.
Good angst. Good angst.
Yeah.
You need specificity in your angst. I think that's what I realized was interesting about reading the poems, the old poems, is that a lot of those emotions I can still identify in my writing now. But there's more precision now. Instead of letting the emotion be kind of generic.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. That was phenomenal, both with the bad poems and with the good. We really appreciate having you on. And as you've already promised, you're going to come back. So,
yes, I'm going to come back now. Yeah, maybe we'll do some more religious poems.
Yes.
Because those have evolved a lot, too.
Oh, I'm sure they have. I'm sure they have. This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
Oh, you need to hear some of Aaron's religious poetry from high school. The I am absolutely certain about everything in faith guy.
Yeah, the one titled I, where it's like, I believe in God. It's a good one for bad poetry sake. Rhyme or free, doesn't matter. It's my bad poetry.